Okay, so today we're going to dive into one of the most fascinating and, let's be honest, mysterious topics out there, the near-death experience. For ages, we've heard these incredible stories and debated what they mean, but what if the sheer consistency in these stories, from all around the world, is pointing to some kind of shared, universal truth? Well, that's exactly what we're going to explore.
So let me just start with this one powerful question, just to get us thinking. What if thousands upon thousands of people, we're talking different cultures, different beliefs, different backgrounds, what if they all basically agree on what happens after we die? Because, the wild thing is, that seems to be exactly what's going on. These are not just a handful of stories you hear now and then. Near-death experiences, or NDEs, are a genuine global phenomenon. They're being reported by people from every single walk of life you can possibly imagine. And what is just so remarkable is the consistency. It's uncanny. The core elements you hear about again and again are almost always the same. This feeling of overwhelming, unconditional love, a sense of peace that's beyond any words. This feeling of being connected, a total unity with everything, a compassionate presence, and very often a review of their entire life. So you can imagine, right? When you have this incredible consistency, it naturally creates a kind of tension, a real friction. Because these deeply personal, direct testimonies, well, they directly challenge centuries of established religious teachings and doctrines. And that brings us right to the heart of it all. It's this collision course, this powerful clash that happens when someone's direct, personal experience runs headfirst into long-held traditions and dogma. And the whole conflict really boils down to this one sharp, really thought-provoking question. Why do so many NDEs describe a God of pure, unconditional love instead of the God of judgment and eternal condemnation that many of us were taught about? And when you lay it out side by side like this, that contrast becomes crystal clear. On one side, you have the traditional dogma, a God that's often tied to fear, to judgment, to punishment. And on the other side, you have the NDE revelation, a compassionate presence, just unconditional love, total peace, and complete understanding. I mean, the two perspectives could not be more different. So the real takeaway here is this. The people who survive these experiences consistently, almost universally, describe a spiritual reality that is just so much bigger, so much more loving, and profoundly more inclusive than what's often been preached from the pulpits. Okay, so if that's the conflict, what's the actual message? What's the unifying spiritual reality that all of these thousands of experiences seem to be pointing towards? Well, it starts by tearing down some really old, heavy ideas. The first part of this core message that people bring back is incredibly simple and incredibly direct. God is not fear. And it keeps going right along that same powerful path, stripping away another layer of dogma. The message is just as clear, just as direct. God is not punishment. And then it all comes together in this one ultimate, beautiful revelation. The core message that thousands upon thousands of people bring back with them is simply this. God is love, and not just any kind of love. A love that is pure, unconditional, and absolutely limitless. Now, it's really, really important to get this next part. This whole insight, it isn't being presented as some sort of attack on faith or a rebellion against religion. Not at all. Instead, it's framed as a direct spiritual revelation. So what does that actually mean? Well, a revelation in this context is a truth that comes to you through your own direct personal experience. It's something you feel, something you know deep inside yourself. It's not something you just inherit from a book or that's told to you by someone else. And this line just sums it up perfectly. It's not about fighting against something old. It's about waking up to something new and deeply, profoundly personal. This isn't rebellion, it's revelation. So the powerful idea here, the big implication, is that these experiences are pointing to a spiritual reality that's just so huge, so vast, that it transcends any single man-made religion or specific doctrine. The divine, according to these thousands of people, simply cannot be put into any one box. So why does any of this matter to you and me, right here, right now? Well, that brings us to the most important part, the kind of freedom that might be waiting for us inside this truth. When you boil it all down, the key takeaways from this whole NDE phenomenon are deeply personal, and they're incredibly empowering. They remind us that, hey, we are so much more than just our physical bodies.
They suggest that we're even more than our most deeply held beliefs. And they affirm that every single one of us is deeply intrinsically connected to the spiritual realm. And that right there, that fundamental shift in how we see things, moving from fear to love, from feeling separate to feeling connected, that is precisely why this conversation, this whole exploration, matters so much. It perfectly sets the stage for our final, powerful thought. So we'll leave you with this final idea that really encapsulates everything we've talked about, because when truth and tradition collide, it is truth that always sets us free.
So, what happens when we die? I mean, for basically all of human history, that question has been left to faith and philosophy. But what if there's another source of information? What if we could actually learn from people who have, for just a moment, crossed that line and come back? Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today. A look at near-death experiences and what they might be telling us about the ultimate mystery.
And right away, here's the thing that's just so fascinating: the consistency. It doesn't matter what culture you're from, what language you speak, what you believe or don't believe. People from devout followers to, hardcore atheists, they're all coming back and describing the same core experience. And that's really hard to just brush aside. It's a universal pattern that kind of demands we pay attention.
Which leads to the million-dollar question, right? If all these wildly different people are reporting the same fundamental thing, what is that thing? Let's break down what they actually say they've seen.
Okay, so first up, let's look at the common threads. These are the things that pop up again and again in thousands of these near-death experiences, or NDEs. This is really the foundation for everything else we're going to talk about.
Forget what you see in the movies, the darkness, the void, all that stuff. The reports are shockingly consistent about this feeling of just overwhelming love and peace. There's this profound sense that everything is connected, a feeling of total unity. People often talk about being greeted by loved ones who've already passed on. And then there's the life review. But get this, it's not a judgment. It's this incredible moment of understanding the ripple effects of your actions. And finally, they describe entering this dimension of pure awareness, something that our normal five senses just can't even begin to compute.
Now, to really get why these accounts are so, revolutionary, we have to understand what they're often up against. And that's the traditional framework of fear that's really shaped so much of our world.
You see, for centuries, a lot of religious doctrine has been built on a foundation of fear. The idea of a God who's keeping score, ready to judge you, and the very real threat of eternal punishment. That was often the main tool used to keep people in line.
But the message coming back from these NDEs, it paints a radically different picture. And we're not talking about a minor little tweak to the old story. It's being presented as a fundamental revelation about the very nature of God and reality itself.
And this quote just nails it. The idea here is that these experiences aren't a rebellion against faith, they're a revelation for faith. It's like a direct insight that's updating our spiritual software,
Unconditional love. Those two words are everything here. It's the one thing that is consistently described as the core characteristic of the divine presence people encounter. It's not a love you have to earn. It's not a love that comes with strings attached. It is just this pure, all-encompassing, limitless compassion.
So this is where it gets really interesting. This is where the two worldviews just slam right into each other. Let's put them side by side and see just how different they really are.
So on one side, you have that traditional picture of a God of fear, a God of punishment. And on the other, you have this consistent testimony from people who've been there, of a presence that is defined purely by unconditional love. I mean, these aren't just slightly different flavors, right? They're two completely opposite views of what's waiting for us.
And the contrast just keeps going. The whole idea of eternal condemnation gets completely replaced by this experience of a life review. And the key part is, it's not a trial where you're found guilty or innocent. It's this moment of profound empathy. It's a chance to understand your life through the eyes of everyone you affected, to learn and to grow.
And finally, there's this really powerful distinction. On one side, you have what you could call the man-made walls of doctrine and ancient interpretations. But on the other, you have a direct, personal, spiritual experience that doesn't belong to any one group or institution.
So, where does all this leave us? I mean, if we take these experiences seriously, what does that imply for how we see the world and, our own place in it?
Well, ultimately, what this all seems to be pointing to is a deeper spiritual reality that goes beyond any single religion. It suggests there's a universal truth that isn't owned by any one group, but is actually the shared inheritance of all of us.
And if you think about it, this whole perspective gives us some pretty profound reminders about who we are. It suggests that we are so much more than just our physical bodies. We're more than the labels and beliefs we hold on to. And that every single one of us has this deep, inherent connection to a spiritual realm, whether we were taught about it or not.
And if you had to boil this entire revelation down into just one sentence, this would probably be it. A simple, powerful message that just reframes everything.
So, why are we even talking about this? I mean, beyond being a really cool topic, why is this conversation so important right here and right now?
Because it leaves us with this powerful idea that the search for truth, even when it bumps up against what we've always been told, what tradition says, that pursuit is what ultimately sets us free. It's a path toward a much deeper understanding of ourselves, and maybe even the entire universe.